What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about Rezolve AI. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So starting off, this upcoming week has a lot of big things coming out that could really push the broader market higher. Starting off on Monday, we have durable goods and Dallas Fed manufacturing index. Tuesday, ADP employment, as well as consumer confidence. Given the circumstances and what has kind of arose lately, I feel like the market's going to be really paying attention to consumer confidence. On Wednesday, we do have mortgage applications, mortgage market index, as well as the dreaded Fed interest rate decision. One thing that did kind of spook the broader market on Friday, which doesn't logically make sense, but we did have JPM and Bank of America just coming out saying don't anticipate any cut. Obviously for this meeting, and which is rather comical because I think overall that was the market already understood that for a while. Just the fact that a lot of research came out about that, I feel like that caused algorithmic trading to really push a lot of stocks lower, and even more so in Rezolve's case, so I'll go over that in a second. On a side note, what Powell says afterwards, that is going to be a very big deal for the broader market. So most likely we won't be getting a cut, but again, what Powell says, that's going to be the big deal. And even though I know I've mentioned this in the past, all of this is American data, Rezolve doesn't have that big of a presence in the States. Hopefully that should be changing in Q2 as what was previously disclosed by Dan. But ultimately, what does move Rezolve is algorithmic trading. So definitely that was a very big attributing factor on Friday. So I'll go over that in a second. But Thursday, we do have initial jobless claims, manufacturing data. So that again could really move things. And then Friday, PPI. So we do have a lot of big data points coming out, but it is going to be really the companies putting out their earnings that's going to move the market. So we have a lot of massive companies, and depending on how their top and bottom line come in and what they give for future guidance, that's what the market is going to be really paying attention to. So for instance, we have Apple, MasterCard, Visa, SoFi, Microsoft, Meta. We have a lot of big names that could easily move the broader market. One thing as well that most likely will loom over the markets probably in the second half of the week, even though it's been known for a while, but another government shutdown could kind of commence on January the 31st, even though again there's no real kind of connection between this and what Rezolve does, but it still will get moved through algorithmic trading. So specific to Rezolve, there really isn't anything planned for this upcoming week. So no interviews, no fireside chats. You did have Dan coming out and doing a post saying this. And normally on Twitter or X, whatever it's called, he kind of just retweets what Rezolve mentions and says like, hey, love it, good stuff, and whatever. This is the first time he's actually outright just saying, hi everyone, relax. Rezolve is the most exciting company I've ever created. It's the fastest growing company I've ever created. It has the most standout product offering of any company I've ever created, blah, blah, blah. So I think that this is definitely good that he's kind of posting this, but at the same time, it really, coming from a CEO, you shouldn't tell investors to relax at all. So I think this different ways how this could be interpreted. I don't really like this because it does signal that he's really looking at the stock price, and coming from a CEO standpoint or just company in general, you should be somewhat vaguely aware of what's happening with your stock, but that shouldn't be enough to justify a post. Only time companies ever care about the stock price is when they need to dilute. That's one very common misunderstanding among investors, is that technically if a stock price goes down, a company's operations just crumbles. That is completely false, because what happens operationally sometimes has absolutely no impact on the stock price, and vice versa. So when it comes down to a CEO or company just kind of very much all about the stock price, usually in my personal experience, it means that the company just wants to dilute, and that is why they are caring. So this is, I guess, a positive and a negative depending on how you see that. Looking at shorts, on Friday they did increase 1.1 million going into this upcoming week. 20.99% of the free float is being shorted. Works to be 24.9 million shares overall being shorted. So shorts have been extremely active lately, and they kind of hit a high of around 33%, and then they just dropped like crazy. So they did take advantage, I guess, of that issuance. I don't know if they knew ahead of time or whatever, but they definitely did take advantage, and they returned a lot of shares. Cost to borrow going into this week, though, is 4.72. So that's an annual rate, not a daily rate, nothing really significant. From a bull standpoint, through the options, it looks like 350 to 4 is on the table. So that's where the bulls feel that it could go to. So a nice little bit of a recovery potentially could occur. And then the bears are anticipating for it to be sub 3. So definitely there is more upside than down, but still I think the frequency, especially on Friday, was more oriented towards kind of the down. One thing as well, as I mentioned in this video, that algorithmic trading is the biggest thing that does move Rezolve, because even if we look on the secondary market from Friday, we had about 2 sells, everything else was buys. So big money legitimately was buying the Rezolve dip. Just if you looked at the stock price and what happened, that kind of paints a different narrative. And this is why, because algorithmic trading was just really hitting Rezolve very, very hard. And that might be potentially telling as well who is actually shorting Rezolve on a side note. So definitely if you're one of those individuals that likes to follow what big money is doing, big money was buying on Friday. Aside from that, though, with it closing at 314, it is trading currently between this S2 and this S3. So 282 is going to be the next strong support, and then 340 is going to be that next strong target / resistance. If this 282 does fail to hold, then this is where you could be seeing kind of danger territory. So a lot more further consolidation. But aside from that, though, on the actual chart itself, things weren't really that great. So for instance, this last week, it did go from here to here. So pretty much a 31.16% loss. Absolutely crazy stuff. So in general, if you were wanting some cheaper prices, maybe that was a blessing in disguise, but definitely things are rough for Rezolve. So this last week, it did break below that 100 and also 200-day moving average. That 50 wasn't tested, so that's currently sitting at 305. So that's going to be pretty much that line in the sand for Rezolve, aside from that 282 fib level that I kind of mentioned. But if that 50-day moving average does break, usually that is a sign of further consolidation, as what we kind of saw back in October. So that's going to be most likely tested this week. One outcome that could occur is it bounces off of that and starts to really move higher. Potentially tested maybe that 10-day moving average, which would probably be roughly around that 360 if that does occur by then. But looking at the market position from Friday, we don't really see that much willing buyers. Even though we did see a good amount of buying actually occur on Friday, amount that is actually setting bids out there, it's not really that much. So a lot more willing sellers than buyers. So it's rather unfortunate on how this all kind of just goes down extremely fast. But at the same time, we've also seen it go up quite considerably very fast in the past. So let me know your thoughts on Rezolve. Where do you see things going this week? Are you bullish, bearish? Do you think Dan's post, which was very abnormal, do you think that is a cry for help? Do you think that is legitimate concern? Or what's your kind of viewpoint on all that? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. Put out daily, day trades, numerous swing trades. Worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.